Captain Thexlor stood at the observation deck of the research vessel Galactic Seeker, his iridescent scales shimmering under the soft blue lighting. The massive ship hung in low Earth orbit, cloaked from primitive human detection systems. He clicked his mandibles together in mild irritation as he reviewed the mission briefing one final time. "Commander Raxus," he called out, not bothering to turn around. "Status report on the specimen containment chambers." "All 20 chambers are prepped and ready," Captain Commander Raxus replied, her crystalline voice echoing through the chamber. "The energy barriers have been calibrated to contain everything from what the humans call an ant to their largest land predator." Thexlor finally turned, his 4 eyes focusing on his second-in-command. Like all members of the Zyraxian Science Division, they shared the same basic physical features: iridescent scales, multiple eyes, and the enhanced neural capacity that made their species the undisputed masters of biological research in the galaxy. But where Thexlor's scales shone with a deep purple hue, Raxus bore the bright green markings of the technical specialist caste. "And the retrieval team?" he asked, already knowing the answer. Efficiency was a hallmark of their species. Lieutenant Kira stepped forward, her orange scales marking her as part of the tactical division. "Team Sigma is ready for deployment, Captain. We've studied Earth's nocturnal patterns extensively. These humans," she practically spat the word, "are so predictable with their sleep cycles." "Excellent." Thexlor moved to the central holographic display, where images of various Earth creatures rotated slowly. "The High Council's directive is clear. We need to understand how these primitive beings have managed to develop such diverse species on their planet. Their genetic manipulation techniques are crude at best, yet they've created thousands of variations of their companion animals." "With respect," Captain interjected Dr. Nexus, the ship's chief xenobiologist, his silver scales catching the light as he approached the display, "I still don't understand why we're wasting resources studying such an underdeveloped world. They haven't even achieved basic interstellar travel." Thexlor's upper eyes narrowed while his lower pair focused on the data streams flowing across the nearby screens. "That's precisely why they're interesting, Doctor. How does a species that can barely leave their own atmosphere manage to create such biological diversity? Their planet hosts millions of species, and they've somehow managed to modify many of them for their own purposes. The High Council believes there's something we're missing." He waved a scaled hand through the hologram, bringing up images of Earth's modified creatures: dogs of countless shapes and sizes, cats with impossible variations, birds that shouldn't be able to fly yet somehow did. "Their methods are primitive, yes, but the results are undeniable." "The collection pods are ready for launch," Captain Raxus reported, her fingers dancing across the control panel. "We've identified several promising specimens in the region humans call North America." Thexlor's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "Begin the deployment sequence. Remember, we are the Zyraxian Science Division. We represent the most advanced civilization in the known galaxy. These humans and their creatures are nothing more than test subjects for our superior understanding of genetics and biology." As the crew dispersed to their stations, none of them noticed the small warning flag in the ship's database, a footnote about Earth creatures displaying unexpected behavioral patterns, particularly in something the humans called emotional bonds. It was dismissed as primitive superstition, unworthy of their advanced scientific minds. They would soon learn just how wrong that assumption was. Lieutenant Kira's voice crackled through the ship's comm system. "Captain, you need to see this." The excitement in her typically controlled tone made Thexlor's scales ripple with interest. He moved swiftly to the observation deck, where a high-resolution hologram displayed a scene from the surface below. The image showed a human dwelling on the outskirts of a forest, but it wasn't the structure that caught his attention. It was the massive creature patrolling the perimeter. "What am I looking at?" Lieutenant Thexlor asked, all 4 eyes focused on the beast's powerful movements. "The humans call it a German Shepherd, Captain. But this one," she manipulated the controls, zooming in. "This one's different. Look at its size, its muscle structure. It's far superior to others of its breed." Dr. Nexus leaned forward, his silver scales reflecting the hologram's light. "Fascinating. The genetic modifications are extraordinary. See how the bone density suggests enhanced strength without compromising agility. And those teeth, they've managed to increase bite force while maintaining jaw stability." The hologram shifted to show a human female emerging from the dwelling. She was tall for her species, with dark hair pulled back tightly, wearing what appeared to be some kind of enforcement uniform. The German Shepherd immediately changed its demeanor, moving to her side with practiced precision. "Nova, perimeter check," the human commanded. The dog Nova instantly began a methodical patrol of the property, moving with military precision. Commander Raxus, who had joined them silently, clicked her mandibles in surprise. That's not normal animal behavior. Look at the neural activity readings we're getting. The creature is actually analyzing its surroundings, not just responding to basic instincts. They watched as Nova completed the patrol and returned to the human. The transformation was remarkable, from vigilant guardian to affectionate companion in seconds. The dog pressed against the human's leg while she scratched behind its ears, both of them clearly sharing some kind of emotional bond. "The human is Officer Maya Rodriguez," Lieutenant Kira reported, pulling up data streams. "Former military K9 handler, now working in local law enforcement. The dog has been with her for 6 years. They live alone on this property." Thexlor's scales darkened with excitement. This is perfect. A prime example of human genetic manipulation, and isolated enough for clean extraction. What's the security situation? Minimal electronic surveillance, easily bypassed. The only real security is, well, the target itself. Kira seemed unusually hesitant. "Captain, I should note that my research shows these police dogs are specifically bred and trained for combat and human protection. This won't be like collecting other Earth specimens." Dr. Nexus waved a dismissive hand. "Please, Lieutenant, we're talking about a primitive Earth creature. Our containment fields can hold beings 3 times its size with 10 times its strength. The most fascinating aspect will be studying how these humans achieved such selective breeding with their limited technology." They continued watching as Officer Rodriguez and Nova moved through various training exercises. The dog's intelligence was obvious, responding to hand signals, verbal commands in multiple languages, and even seeming to anticipate its handler's needs. "Look at that devotion," Commander Raxus mused. "It's almost like..." "Like what?" Commander Thexlor prompted. "Nothing, Captain. Just an observation about primitive species and their tendency toward pack behavior." But she kept watching as Nova pressed protectively against Officer Rodriguez's leg when a delivery vehicle approached the property. Thexlor had seen enough. "Prepare for night extraction. We'll take both specimens. The dog is clearly the prime target, but having its handler for comparison will be valuable. Lieutenant Kira, ready your team. Commander Raxus, prepare 2 containment cells. Dr. Nexus, stand by for immediate genetic analysis once we have them aboard." As the crew dispersed to prepare for the mission, Thexlor remained at the observation window, watching Nova and Officer Rodriguez. Something about their interaction nagged at his highly evolved brain, a suggestion that perhaps they were missing something important about the relationship between human and dog. He dismissed the thought. After all, how complex could the emotional bonds of primitive Earth species really be? Earth's moon hung low in the sky as Lieutenant Kira led her extraction team toward the target location. Their stealth suits bent light around them, rendering them nearly invisible in the darkness. The night was perfect for an extraction, cloudy, with a light breeze to mask any sounds. "Team positions," Kira whispered into her neural comm. 3 acknowledgement clicks responded. They had surrounded the house in a standard capture formation, just as they'd done on countless other worlds. Inside the ship, Captain Thexlor watched through the team's neural feeds. "Remember, the priority is the canine specimen. The human is secondary." The extraction team activated their bioscanners. 2 heat signatures appeared, 1 human, 1 canine, both in what appeared to be a sleeping chamber. Perfect. Kira raised her tranquilizer weapon and gave the signal. The team began their approach, their gravity manipulators allowing them to move without making a sound. 20 meters to target. 15, 10. A twig snapped. Nova's ears twitched. Before Kira could even process what was happening, the German Shepherd's eyes snapped open. There was no gradual awakening, no confusion, just instant, alert awareness. The dog's head turned directly toward Kira's position, despite her stealth suit. "Impossible," she breathed. "It can't see through." Nova's bark shattered the night's silence. It wasn't the bark of a startled dog, it was a trained military command bark, specific and purposeful. Officer Rodriguez bolted upright, already reaching for something beside her bed. "Abort," Kira commanded. But it was too late. The lights in the house flashed on, revealing a security system far more sophisticated than their scans had detected. Nova launched through what they had assumed was a closed window. It had been a hologram, a trap. Contact one of Kira's team screamed. The sound cut off in a gurgle as 90 pounds of highly trained German Shepherd slammed into him at full speed. The impact disrupted his stealth suit, making him visible. Nova's teeth found his arm with surgical precision, and the sound of crystalline alien bone cracking echoed through the night. "Containment field," Kira shouted, activating her emergency protocols. A shimmer of energy formed around Nova, who was already moving to his next target. The field should have held any Earth creature. Should have. Nova hit the barrier at full speed. For a moment, the field glowed bright blue, straining. Then something impossible happened. The dog adjusted its angle mid-leap, somehow finding the resonance frequency of the field. The barrier shattered. Captain Kira called into her comm. "The specimen is displaying impossible behavior patterns. It's not just acting on instinct, it's using tactics." Inside the house, Officer Rodriguez had taken cover, her voice ringing out clear and confident. "Nova, Intruder Protocol Alpha." The German Shepherd's entire demeanor changed. Gone was any trace of an ordinary dog. Its movements became calculated, precise. It wasn't hunting them as prey, it was systematically taking them apart as threats. Two more of Kira's team went down. Their advanced armor, designed to withstand the attacks of the galaxy's most fearsome predators, was being methodically targeted at its weak points. Somehow, this primitive Earth creature was identifying and exploiting vulnerabilities in technology thousands of years more advanced than anything its species had encountered. "Escalate to full containment," Thex Lore ordered through the comm. "Use maximum force if necessary." Kira raised her weapon, its tip glowing with enough tranquilizer to drop a creature 10 times Nova's size. She had the shot. The dog was focused on her last standing team member. She squeezed the trigger. Nova dropped and rolled at the last possible second. The tranquilizer bolt missed, and before Kira could fire again, she heard Officer Rodriguez's voice. "Nova, take the shot." The German Shepherd's muscles coiled, and Kira suddenly realized her mistake. They had assumed they were dealing with an animal. They were wrong. They were dealing with a soldier. Nova hit her with the force of a small missile. As Kira went down, she caught a glimpse of Officer Rodriguez emerging from the house, wearing what appeared to be modified military gear, not the simple local law enforcement uniform they had observed earlier. Captain Kira gasped into her comm as Nova pinned her down. "Abort mission." The human, she's not just a local officer. This was a setup. The rest of her warning was cut off as Nova's teeth closed around her comm unit, crushing it with precise force. The dog's eyes locked onto hers, and Kira saw something that her species' science had never prepared her for: not just intelligence, but a fierce, unshakable loyalty. Through the neural feeds, Captain Thex Lore watched in stunned silence as his elite extraction team was systematically disabled by what they had dismissed as a primitive Earth pet. But it was Officer Rodriguez's next words that sent a chill through his scales. "Good boy, Nova. Signal sent. Backup incoming." Now she smiled, looking directly at one of their hidden cameras. "Let's show these aliens what happens when they mess with a K9 handler and her partner." The last thing Thex Lore saw before the feeds went dark was Nova standing protectively over his fallen handler, teeth bared, every muscle tensed for combat. This wasn't just a dog protecting its owner. This was a warrior defending its companion, and they had grossly underestimated both. Captain Thex Lore paced the bridge of the Galactic Seeker, his scales shifting between shades of agitation. The extraction team's emergency teleport had managed to bring both targets aboard, but that's when everything started going wrong. "Status report," he barked, watching as warning lights flashed across every console. Commander Raxus's fingers flew across her control panel. "Sir, containment cell 3 has been compromised. The human female is secured in cell 4, but the canine..." She paused, mandibles clicking nervously. "It's not possible." "What's not possible, Commander?" A massive crash echoed through the ship's corridors, followed by the sound of tearing metal. "The specimen is displaying knowledge of our ship's systems that it cannot possibly have," Raxus explained, her voice tight with stress. "It's not just breaking containment, it's systematically disabling our security measures." Dr. Nexus burst onto the bridge, his silver scales pale with fear. "Captain, The creature, it's not just operating on instinct. When we separated it from the human, I expected rage, confusion, perhaps fear. Instead, another crash rang out, closer this time. Instead, it's hunting us. Through the ship's internal cameras, they watched as Nova moved through the corridors with military precision. The German Shepherd wasn't randomly searching, it was clearing sections of the ship exactly as a trained operative would. Impossible, Thexlor whispered. How does it know our ship's layout? Sir, a junior technician called out. The creature's neural patterns, they're synchronized with our computer system somehow. Every time we try to trap it, it's already 3 steps ahead. Nova appeared on another camera, stopping at an intersection. The dog's head tilted, ears forward, then it looked directly at the camera. Its lips pulled back, showing teeth in what could only be described as a calculated grin. That's not a grin, Commander Raxus said, her voice shaking. That's a target acquisition expression. It's learned our camera systems. It's using our own surveillance against us. The lights on the bridge flickered. Somewhere in the distance, they heard the distinct sound of a power coupling being torn apart. How, Dr. Nexus demanded, how is a primitive Earth creature doing this? Lieutenant Kira, now recovered but nursing a broken arm, spoke up from her position by the door. Sir, requesting permission to speak freely. Thexlor nodded, too focused on the chaos unfolding across his ship to maintain protocol. We made a critical error in our initial assessment, Kira said. We assumed the bond between handler and dog was simple pack behavior. But look at the neural scans from when we first brought them aboard. She pulled up a holographic display showing 2 intertwined patterns of brain activity, one human, one canine. They're not just companions, she continued. Years of working together, training together, living together, they've developed a kind of shared consciousness. When we separated them, we didn't break their connection. We just made it angry. Another explosion rocked the ship. The emergency containment doors began closing automatically, a security protocol designed to contain threats. Nova appeared on the main viewing screen, sitting calmly in front of a major power junction. The dog's eyes seemed to stare directly at Thexlor as it placed one paw on a crucial power coupling. Don't, Thexlor breathed. It couldn't possibly know. Nova's teeth flashed. The power coupling sparked, and the ship's artificial gravity went haywire. Crew members went flying as gravity shifted wildly from one section to another. But through it all, Nova moved with perfect precision, using the changing gravitational fields like stepping stones. The human commander Raxus shouted over the chaos. The containment cell's power is fluctuating. On another screen, they watched Officer Rodriguez calmly step out of her cell. She looked directly into the camera and spoke. Nova, pattern Delta, find me. The German Shepherd's bark echoed through the ship's corridors, not a sound of aggression, but an acknowledgement of orders. Security teams, converge on both targets, Thexlor commanded. But the security teams were already dealing with cascading system failures across the ship. Doors opened and closed randomly. Life support flickered in different sections. The sophisticated vessel, pride of the Zyraxian Science Division, was being taken apart by what they had dismissed as a simple Earth pet. Sir, Lieutenant Kira said quietly, watching Nova methodically make its way toward Officer Rodriguez's position, disabling every system it encountered. I don't think we're containing it anymore. I think it's containing us. Dr. Nexus, who had been analyzing the neural patterns, suddenly went rigid. Captain, these readings, the dog isn't just working from training. Every system it disables, every route it takes, it's all coming from the human's knowledge. Somehow, their neural connection is allowing the dog to access and understand complex technological concepts through its handler's understanding. Thexlor watched as his ship's systems continued to fail one by one. Nova wasn't just searching for its handler, it was systematically isolating the bridge, cutting off their escape routes, hurting them exactly where it wanted them. Magnificent, Commander Raxus whispered, professional admiration overtaking her fear. We thought we were studying them, but they've been analyzing us this entire time. The lights on the bridge turned red as the last backup systems began to fail. Through the cameras, they could see Nova and Officer Rodriguez moving through the ship in perfect synchronization, 2 parts of a single devastating force. Captain Lieutenant Kira said, her voice filled with a new emotion that no Zyraxian had felt in centuries. Awe. I don't think this is about escape anymore. They're not trying to get away from us." A final bark echoed through the ship's corridors. This time, everyone recognized it for what it was. A war cry. The bridge of the Galactic Seeker had become a fortress of fear. Captain Thex Lore and his remaining crew huddled around flickering displays, watching their ship transform into a hunting ground. The proud Zyraxian officers, used to being the galaxy's apex predators, had become prey. "Another section gone dark," Captain Commander Raxus reported, her voice barely a whisper. "They're moving through the ship's maintenance tunnels now." A low growl echoed through the ventilation system. Not angry or aggressive, playful. The sound of a predator enjoying the hunt. "How many crew members are still responding?" Thex Lore asked, trying to maintain some semblance of control. 12, sir." "No." 11. Raxus's scales paled. Teams 3 and 4 went dark trying to reach the armory. "The security feeds show they're alive, sir, but..." The main screen flickered to life, showing a corridor where several Zyraxian officers lay unconscious. Their weapons had been methodically dismantled, pieces arranged in a deliberate pattern on the floor. A message. "They're toying with us," Dr. Nexus muttered, his scientific detachment crumbling. "The human and the dog, they could have disabled us immediately. Instead, they're turning our own psychological warfare protocols against us." A bark echoed from somewhere below, followed by the sound of Officer Rodriguez's voice through the ship's comm. "You know, for an advanced species, you really should have done better research. Nova isn't just a dog. He's a retired Delta Force K9. We specialized in ship boarding operations." The remaining bridge crew looked at each other in horror as the implications sank in. They hadn't just captured any dog and handler, they'd captured a specialized military team trained specifically for this type of warfare. "Contingency Alpha," Thex Lore commanded. "Flood all sections with paralytic gas." "Negative, Sir," Lieutenant Kira replied, nursing her broken arm. "Environmental controls aren't responding." And she pointed to a screen showing Nova wearing what appeared to be a modified breathing apparatus. "They've adapted our own emergency gear." The lights went out completely. When they came back on seconds later, Nova sat in the middle of the bridge entrance, tail wagging slightly. None of them had heard the door open. The crew scrambled back, but the German Shepherd didn't move. Instead, Nova tilted his head, those intelligent eyes scanning each alien present. Then, deliberately, he pushed something across the floor with his nose, a data pad. Dr. Nexus picked it up with trembling hands. "It's our research data on Earth species. Every file has been corrupted, except one: understanding canine loyalty, a primer for alien idiots." Another bark echoed through the ship, this time from a different direction. Nova was gone when they looked back at the door. "Don't you get it?" Officer Rodriguez's voice came through the comm again. "Nova's not attacking you because I haven't given the command. This isn't about escape or revenge. This is a lesson." The remaining security teams reported in, each more panicked than the last. Nova seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, herding crew members into secure areas, disabling weapons, always one step ahead. Captain Commander Raxus said, her professional demeanor finally cracking. "The human term for this is running us ragged. They're not just demonstrating their superiority, they're making us experience what it means to be hunted by someone you underestimated." A series of playful barks echoed through different sections of the ship, making it impossible to track Nova's true position. The psychological impact was devastating. The mighty Zyraxian Science Division, reduced to jumping at shadows by what they had dismissed as a primitive Earth pet. Thex Lore watched his crew deteriorating under the strain. The hunter had become the hunted, and the worst part was knowing that every moment of their terror was a carefully orchestrated demonstration of what they had failed to understand about Earth's creatures. The true power of loyalty. Captain Thex Lore stood alone in his private quarters, watching the security feeds. His crew was contained but unharmed, his ship effectively under the control of a human and her dog. The mighty Zyraxian scales had lost their luster, dulled by the weight of revelation. "You're ready to talk now, aren't you?" Officer Rodriguez's voice came through his personal comm. Not taunting, not threatening. Understanding. "Yes," he replied simply. The door slid open. Officer Rodriguez entered, Nova at her side. The German Shepherd's posture was relaxed but alert, a perfect mirror of his handler's stance. Thex Lore noticed something he'd missed in all their observations. They breathed in sync. Your species prides itself on scientific advancement, Rodriguez said, running her hand along Nova's head. But you've missed something fundamental about Earth's evolution. Nova sat, eyes fixed on Thek's lore. The captain found himself unable to look away from that steady gaze. The neural connection, he said, it's more than just training. Much more, Rodriguez smiled. Humans and dogs evolved together, Captain. Over thousands of years we shaped each other. Not through your advanced genetic manipulation, but through something far more powerful: choice. Commander Raxus's voice came through the comm. Captain, I'm analyzing the neural patterns again. The synchronization we observed, it's not a trained response. It's not even a genetic modification. It's love, Rodriguez finished. Loyalty. Trust. Concepts your species seems to have evolved beyond in your quest for perfection. Nova stood and approached Thek's lore. The captain tensed, but the dog simply sat in front of him, offering a paw. A gesture Rodriguez had to explain. He's showing you what you failed to understand. On Earth, the most powerful bonds aren't forced through containment or compelled through technology. They're chosen, built through trust and mutual respect. Thek's lore slowly reached out and took the offered paw. The moment of contact sent a shiver through his scales. He felt something, an echo of the connection he'd been observing. Your species has achieved remarkable things, Rodriguez continued. But in your drive to understand genetics and biology, you've forgotten about the power of emotional evolution. Nova doesn't protect me because he's programmed to. He chooses to, every single day. The captain looked between human and dog, seeing their relationship with new eyes, the way he dismantled our systems. I know the ship's weaknesses from my military training. Nova knows my mind. Together, we're more than the sum of our parts. That's what you're really seeing, not just a trained animal, but a partnership built on absolute trust. Dr. Nexus burst in, clutching data readings. Captain, the neural scans, they're showing something unprecedented. The emotional bond between them, it's actually affecting their genetic expression in real time. They're still evolving, still adapting, not through manipulation but through connection. Thek's lore finished. His scales shifted to a deep blue of understanding. All our advanced science, and we never considered that evolution could be driven by emotional bonds. Nova returned to Rodriguez's side, pressing against her leg. The handler scratched behind his ears, and Thek's lore watched in fascination as both their neural patterns synchronized in a dance of mutual trust and affection. Your mission was to understand how humans created such diverse and capable companion species, Rodriguez said. Well, here's your answer, Captain. We didn't create them. We grew together. Every dog like Nova is the product of thousands of years of choices made by both species, to trust, to protect, to love. Thek's lore sank into his chair, overwhelmed by the implications. His species had mastered genetic manipulation, achieved technological wonders, but they had never considered that the most powerful force in evolution might be something as simple and as complex as the bond between a human and her dog. What happens now? He asked quietly. Nova barked once, and Rodriguez smiled. That's up to you, Captain. The question isn't what we'll do to you, but what you've learned about what we can do. About what real loyalty means. Captain Thek's lore stood before the High Council of the Zyraxian Science Division. His scales a complex pattern of blues and purples reflecting his mixed emotions. The massive chamber was silent as the council reviewed the footage from their failed specimen collection mission. So Grand Counselor Vex N.A. spoke, her ancient scales shimmering with disapproval. You not only failed to secure the specimens, but you allowed them to commandeer an advanced research vessel, and then you let them go. With respect, Grand Counselor Thek's lore replied. They let us go. He gestured to the holographic display, showing Nova and Officer Rodriguez's systematic dismantling of his ship's systems. What you're seeing isn't just tactical superiority. It's a demonstration of something our entire species has overlooked. Commander Raxus stepped forward, her green scales bright with excitement, despite the formal setting. Council members, our mission was to understand how humans achieved such remarkable results in companion species development. We found the answer, but it wasn't what we expected. The display shifted to show the neural pattern readings. Dr. Nexus, still bearing marks from their encounter, pointed to the intertwined patterns. This is beyond anything in our genetic archives. The bond between human and dog isn't just biological, it's a complex emotional symbiosis that actually affects genetic expression in real time. And this justifies the loss of our most advanced research vessel, another council member demanded. Thexlor's scales rippled with unexpected confidence. No, council member. This justifies a complete reassessment of our understanding of evolution itself. He pressed a control, and the chamber filled with images of Nova and Officer Rodriguez working in perfect synchronization. We've mastered genetic manipulation, he continued, but these humans and their companions achieve something more profound through emotional bonds developed over thousands of years. They don't just modify their companion species, they grow together. The recording showed the moment Nova had offered his paw to Thexlor. Several council members shifted uncomfortably as they watched their captain accept the gesture. Before we departed, Thexlor said, Officer Rodriguez gave us a gift. He held up a data crystal. A comprehensive study of human-canine partnerships throughout their history. Not just the genetics, but the emotional components we've been missing. Lieutenant Kira, her arm still in a healing unit, spoke up. They could have destroyed us. Instead, they chose to teach us. That choice itself demonstrates what we failed to understand about Earth species. The final recording played Nova and Officer Rodriguez's departure from the ship. The German Shepherd had turned at the last moment, offering a playful bark that somehow managed to sound both friendly and warning. My recommendation to the Council, Thexlor said firmly, is that we designate Earth as a protected study world, not for specimen collection, but for observation. They have mastered something we lost in our pursuit of pure science, the power of emotional evolution. Grand Counselor Vexnay's scales shifted through several colors before settling on a deep gold of contemplation. And what of the human and her companion? They know of our existence now. Thexlor allowed himself a small smile. Their final message was clear. They'll keep our secret as long as we respect their boundaries. And he hesitated, then continued. Officer Rodriguez offered to establish a limited cultural exchange program. Not for specimen collection, but for genuine understanding. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Finally, Vexnay raised a hand for silence. Captain Thexlor, your mission failed in its original objective but succeeded in discovering something far more valuable. Your recommendations are accepted. As the council session ended, Thexlor received one final communication on his personal device. A short video showing Nova playing in his yard, followed by a text message from Officer Rodriguez. Remember, the strongest bonds are chosen, not forced. Come back when you're ready to learn more. Nova says you're not bad for an alien. Looking out at the stars through the council chamber's window, Captain Thexlor realized that their greatest discovery wasn't about genetics or evolution. It was about the incredible power of a bond freely given, and the remarkable things that could happen when two species chose to grow together. His scales shifted to a color none of his crew had ever seen before, the Zyraxian expression of hope.